am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She is the author of several books, best-selling author too, and of course a musician, no other than Miss Sapha Burnell.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I hope all of you are having a fantastic January, wherever you are on this beautiful, wonderful, and wild world.
Wild World.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Miss Burnell, how's your new year?
My New Year is doing great. I'm very excited. I had an incredibly restful holiday season. And so I am excited to continue working on all of my future releases. And also, I'm looking forward to this year because there are so many good books coming out. It's going to be hard to choose. But all over the place, there's just tons of science fiction and fantasy that's going to blow people's worlds. And I love that. So I'm feeling rested. I'm feeling creative and I'm feeling like we're gonna have some fun.
Definitely, yes. So, today, people, Miss Burnell and I, we're gonna talk about this coming sci-fi fantasy and of course her books too. Let's compare the books of Miss Safa Burnell and other science fantasy book.
Sounds great.
So Miss Burnell, where are we gonna start?
I wanted to start with looking at some predictions I have for 2024. It might be a little risky. Somebody at the end of the year might be like, okay, how'd that work out for you? But I'm seeing some trends and I would love to just kind of take a brief second to take a look at them, especially since many of them do, oh my goodness, thank goodness, align with the releases that I'm making this year. So, whew,
Con-
hopefully this works. One thing I'm seeing is a slow withdrawal from Hellene and Norse mythology. So, like Greek and Norse mythology as the main mythology of the book. I'm
Mhm.
seeing that kind of fade away a little bit because people are like, it's great, but we're kind of tired. Like, we've seen it before. And this happens. It happened with werewolves and vampires. It happens with basically any large kind of swell of stories. Eventually, people get a little oversaturated with it. Some people are saying that it's happening in the film industry with superhero fatigue and things like that. And so
Yes.
sometimes you need something as strong as Greek myth, as strong as Norse myth to just sort of drift off just for a little bit. And then it can come back in a few years when people are like, oh, yeah, you know what? I kind of feel like more of it. We've got Madeline Miller, magic realism and myth punk and mythology as strong as ever. I just think that there's room in the space for more Egyptian, pre-Islamic, and Far Eastern folklore and mythology to make its way into the books that people are really absorbing now. So I'm really excited about that because the Judge of Mystic Saga is coming with the last two books of the quartet with Ginnungagap and then an extra book called Psychopomp, which is going to be both of them heavily, heavily myth punk with tons of different mythological pantheons that are addressed in those books. And I'm really excited about it. I'm also excited about The Jinn Waits 100 Years by Shinum Khan, which is coming out. That one's historical fantasy, and it takes place in South Africa. It's both a romance and it's a mystery, and it's got this haunting mythology where a jinn is waiting in a heartbroken state because this love died in the house that now the new owners are taking care of, and I'm excited about how that's going to come in because jinn are fascinating.
Interesting, Miss Burnell. So, what do you think? Why nowadays the genre of mythology are fading?
I think I think people have had so much wonderful, amazing time with stories about, retellings of Zeus and Aphrodite and retellings with Apollo. And especially, we see it Coming forward this year, July 2nd, we have The Hades Calculus by Maria Ying coming out. And Maria Ying is actually two authors that are working under a pseudonym. So we have, so much going on, and we have had so much going on with specifically Greek myth for so long, because that was the classical kind of literature. Like, you think classical literature, the classical part of that includes the entire amount of Greek historical works that we still have extant in our collections as authors, as people in this world. And so people love it. There's always more things that you could say. There's always ways you can retell those myths, but they're looking around the world going, yeah, but what other myths are there too? And so I think that people are going to start kind of drifting away from the Greek mythology just a little bit, just for a little while, because they want to know, but wait a minute, what about Egyptian mythology? What's that with Ra and Nut and Hathor? Like, what's going on there? Like, this whole thing, with Horus losing an eye. What's going on with that? What about that? I think Yoruban myth in West Africa is so incredibly interesting, and it has so many vivacious and just mind-blowing gods, goddesses, characters, and stories that I think people are going to start going there, because it's something fresh that the majority of people reading these books have not necessarily heard before. And I think too, with Slavic literature and, like, folklore from the Balkans, folklore from more Slavic and Eastern European places, we're going to get a little bit more of that too, especially because the pre-Christian gods and goddesses are almost try and find information on them. Try.
Yes.
Like, they became Christian so soon, relatively speaking, in history, that we don't have many of those stories. We have a lot of folklore. We have a lot of folk tales, the Rusalka, and then you have, like Makosh, you've got Velez and Perun, you've got those figures, but there's so much room there to discover and play. And so many people have been, just because of global events, more, I don't know if interested is the word, but they've been more focused on Eastern Europe, that I think for a little while we're going to see Eastern European myth, we're going to see Egyptian myth, pre-Islamic myth, and then some other mythologies kind of take up some of that space that we used to see only Greek and Norse. And we're just going to, put more plates at the table so all of us have a spot.
So, Miss Burnell, what do you think as a writer? What elements that you're gonna put in your novel Ginnungagap to make this mythology bestseller?
All right, first things first, Ginnungagap is a Norse concept. So obviously there's a lot of Norse mythology there. What I'm also doing with Ginnungagap is, yes, we've got Thor. Yes, we've got Thor's kids and grandkids. There is the family drama. A lot of the things that I'm seeing is that people are kind of mixing it up. Instead of it just being a sci-fi novel, it's a sci-fi novel with a philosophical discussion on, birth order or gender or something else in it. You've got multiple layers. So I've got the family drama, but the people that are in that family too are people like, there's the characters of Mama Ya and Kofi, who come from a more West African Yoruban place. Something that I'm kind of using as a composite. And, for me, obviously, if you see a picture of me, you're like, what are you doing, you Scandinavian person of Scandinavian descent? I I spent 20 years of my life going backwards and forwards from West Africa. I have family in West Africa. I was basically raised as a teenager on Yoruban myth, on the Anansi tales, in my memoir career, where I edit memoirs. I edit almost exclusively West African stories. And so I do have, I've got a little basis. Obviously, I am bringing in, authorities on that in order to make sure that everything is as authentic as possible. But I do actually have, I've read them. I've been there. I've, I'm not coming to this from a Wikipedia search and a couple of types of the library. So, hopefully people like what I and my West African cousin have done when we've added in some Yoruban elements to the Judge of Mystic Saga. And then, of course, I've got the Slavic side of things with characters like Makosh and Veles and Tuya. So I'm adding all of those layers in and creating a situation in the Judge of Mystics, which, this is something that's been stable in the Judge of Mystics since 2012 when I first started writing the world. That I wanted to have as many different mythological pantheons as possible represented. And I get to do that. I get to play with that. I get to have fun with that. And it's been built into the Judge of Mystic saga from day one. And so that for me is just so refreshing because I'm hoping that everybody really likes it. I'm hoping that they're liking the fact that it's not just one pantheon, but you've got this intersection of a whole bunch of different cultures. And then one of the subplots of the entire series is how these cultures come in their differences and their strengths to work together.
That'd be awesome, Miss Burnell. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Egypt. Marhaba, Egypt, because we are talking about Egyptian mythology. Because in Cairo Governorate, I got 53% audience share. Alexandria at 37%, Giza at 7%, and Gambia at 3%. Thank you, Egypt, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Miss Sapha Burnell. So, Miss Burnell, Ginnungagap, what is the big highlight that you can share to us?
Ooh. Okay, so Ginnungagap takes the three previous novels and their focus on, you can probably hear some tippity tapping in the background. I'm not sure if my mic is picking it up, but my beautiful rescue dog is he's walking up and down the hall waiting for me, and he's like click 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 click, hello, click 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 click, click, hello, click click click, hello. Pardon me.
Lovely job.
He's just done it for the fifth time. I'm like, okay. Love you too, Iro. You're the goodest of boys. Okay, so Ginnungagap takes the first three novels, so Char and Dash, Son of Abel, and Book of Revels, and it's concluding that story of bringing family together. So in Char and Dash, what we see, where we start, is a very chaotic place, especially for our titular hero, Caleb Matheson, the Judge of Mystics. He's vastly alone. He's kind of fragmented and kept separate. He doesn't have, a family around him because it's all fragmented. It's out there. It's not, it's not together. By Ginnungagap, that gap, that massive void between the disconnection of family and family coming together closes. It comes closed. It ends up being, you healed what can be healed. And then the rest of it is brought in with found family, with adopted family. And I'm very glad about that because I've put this character through a lot. And so there's still action. There's still massive battles in it, as people would expect from my work. There's still going to be some pugilism. There's still fight scenes and things like that. There is still an enemy to defeat. But when it comes to Caleb Matheson and where he's at in life, by the end of Ginnungagap, he has his family around him. They have reconnected, and they are going to be going forth from there in a very genuine and loving place. So it's definitely more of the healing and less of the, oh my gosh, Sapha, what did you do now? I'm not, I don't think I'm going to get as many text messages from some of my my beta readers and some of my early fans who, they found my Discord and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm reading this, and how could you do this? Why? Why did you do this? When's book 3 coming out?
So, Miss Burnell, how did you connected the book 1, book 2 from the book three of your latest novel, Ginnungagap.
They all happen linearly, so Charanash, the events of Charanash are just a few weeks before the events of Son of Abel. And then Book of Revels actually takes place the day after Son of Abel ends. And then Ginnungagap takes place a few months after the events of Book of Revels. So timeline wise, they are incredibly connected because they are all within this sort of recent time for Caleb. Also, I include the characters all over again. I've got characters like Ares and Ifrit and Icarus and Lou, and I've got characters like Finnegan the Fae and Tuya. And the precocious charisma, she's in there too. 13 years of her, 13-year-old thinking that she's ready to take on the world, and her big stepsister Soraya, who's like, get over here. Like, you are not wielding Thor's hammer and taking it to school. But no, okay. So
That
that thread between all of them is definitely some of the characters, but also tying up the loose ends. So in Book of Revels, we see the loose end of Stana, the villain from books 1 and 2. We see her get her end desserts. Stana is she's getting it. There's no more. She cannot run any farther. Justice is coming. Get ready. And then in Ginnungagap, we see the tied up loose end of Cormac. He finally gets his comeuppance as well. So we definitely have some elements that you got to wait until Ginnungagap to get those done, and then Psychopomp will be coming after, and that'll be a lot of fun.
interesting, Miss Burnell. So, Ginnungagap, what behind the title of your novel?
So Ginnungagap is this concept it's kind of like the void, or the chaotic waters that you get in a lot of cosmogonic mythology stories. When you're looking at the beginning of the cosmos, when you're looking at the beginning of the world, a lot of mythologies start around this chaotic ocean or this sort of chaotic dark void. And in Norse mythology, the Ginnungagap, that giant gap, is the chaos basically before the world. And that's where the different locations like, Niflheim and all of that kind of, the fires of one, the ice of the other, they kind of coexist until eventually you get the icy mountain in which Ymir is the proto giant, and then Audumla, the cosmic cow. Usually in a lot of mythologies, there is some form of cosmic cow. Lecks him out of the ice. And that is how the universe is started. And so Ginnungagap is this chaotic and void-like space before the creation of the world. And so for Caleb, it is this sort of chaotic space, you know, that exists. It still exists, but it also existed before the world. And it's also this kind of symbol of closing in on the Ginnungagap so that everything can basically start anew and start again. So
What a novel, a sci-fi novel to looking forward for it, right, Miss Burnell?
oh, it's gonna be great. I'm
That's
looking
gonna
forward
be
to it.
awesome. Yes. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season. People, we are live this coming Monday. I'm inviting you to watch for it. Live podcast with Chef Alessandro. We're gonna talk about our Volume 12 Italian Cuisine, people.
Mm.
Live in link on LinkedIn. And of course, our Spotify listeners. So, Miss Bernal, next week, can we do live too?
Yeah, we could.
Do live next Sunday for our Book 101 review. Also, Food 101. Please do listen and tune in this coming Monday. And of course, our books are out, not only one, but 13 volumes, people. Food 101, Volume 1, basics. Until 13 is only the books that you need how to create a delicious food. So, Miss Burnell, Ginnungagap, if you compare to other fiction novel, what is the big difference?
The big difference. I think probably the biggest difference with Ginnungagap from some of the other novels that I'm seeing that are going to be hot, coming in 2024 is usually when you see, family drama and that kind of thing, you don't necessarily also see gigantic battles. I'm sort of combining, two very distinct groups in my ideal readers. Not only that's sort of a little bit sometimes, not always, but sometimes more feminine, family drama and coming together. We've got some kick-ass girls in these books, that are taking care of the plot and making sure everything's functioning. You've got that kind of emotional life over here with the family drama with, Caleb's father connecting with his absentee father, Thor. You've got all these things that you're like, "Oh my goodness, look at that emotion. It is so intense." That emotion is intense, it's luscious, it's bringing it. And then on the flip of that, you've also got like massive battles where, armies to end existence are ready to duke it out to make sure that Cormac doesn't take over, the entirety of the realms. So you've got that really kind of almost dichotic tension between the family and the emotional and then the combat oriented in action. And I think that's kind of, I see it, but I don't see it as often. Usually one of the two is a little bit more superfluous, but I bring it with both barrels. And I just let it
Yes.
be, like I let those fight scenes happen. I let that combat and that kind of visceral action happen. And especially when it comes to planning the battles for Ginnungagap, because Book of Revels and Ginnungagap have the largest battles in the series. And when I say largest battles, I also mean just in the amount of people that are in them character wise and NPC wise too, but like the character wise. And so I ended up when we were writing it, I ended up planning out these battles with the help of two military veteran friends of mine. So I was like, okay, this is what we got. What are we doing? And, they're like, okay, you can't do that. Why? It's dumb. Okay. you and so we've been planning out those battles together as a way of just kind of bringing in again some more authenticity to the experience of being in a battle. And I really like doing that. I really like in my research stages and in my draft stages, if I'm challenging something or if I'm writing something that I'm not necessarily got first person knowledge about, I'm definitely bringing somebody in to act as an advisor, to act as an editor, to act as an influence that I can be like, hey, what do you think? This is what I plan to do. Where am I at? Okay, well, let's modify some things. Okay, great. I love doing that because in the end, I'm hoping it brings a more realistic experience. Even though I say realistic, I don't mean realism because there's literal gods, goddesses, and like people shooting lightning from their fingers. So that clearly does not, unless something is drastically wrong, people don't shoot lightning from their fingers.
Yes, definitely.
I hope they're wearing rubber shoes.
So, Miss Bernard, what are your struggles in writing Ginnungagap?
Oh, definitely figuring out what pieces to conclude. I think for me, one of the most difficult things is ending, because I have so many different storylines that I tie into things because there's always a secondary character. There's always this, there's always that. Because the Judge of Mystics 2 is such a large world, we've got this novel series, we've got this quartet, the Judge of Mystics quartet. And there's also an audio drama that's currently in production called Waxwing. And so several of the characters in Waxwing, aka Icarus, Lou, Soraya, those characters are in the Judge of Mystic saga in a different way. And so I need to make sure that when I'm closing these parts of the novel, that there was still enough of an opening for season 4 of Waxwing to end up having the continuation of that part of the story. So it's, for me, it's a little bit tricky in that respect because the Judge of Mystic Saga has turned into something multimedia. It's turned into something too where on the side with Blade and Banter Press and with Emily Armstrong, who is the creator of Quests and Quarrels, which is a TTRPG system, we are developing modules of the Judge of Mystics world so people can play them as tabletop games. And so I'm concluding this part of Caleb's story. I'm making sure the family comes together. I'm leaving people at a good place. I want that sense of completion with Ginnungagap, but I also don't want to shut so many doors that it's like, well, it's weird that you opened this one again because we left it on such a good place. So I want to make sure that people who just listen to Waxwing can still enjoy what happens there. But then obviously the hope is that you read the books, you want to listen to Waxwing, you listen to Waxwing, ooh, I want to read the books. It's I'm hoping that it connects everybody there. But I think that was definitely the most difficult one because I just ask my editors. I am
Yes.
definitely the kind of author that writes too many plot lines, that has too many characters on the go and needs to reduce down. I don't, as much as I give the advice, start small, start with one character, one this, one that, and then go from there. I just did a workshop called Asset Economy on Short Fiction that is currently available at sapharburnell.com. And talking about writing short fiction, you want to start with one protagonist. You don't need to have 7, you just need one protag, you need one antag. That antagonist can be a character, it can be the setting, it can be something going on in the protagonist's mind, whatever it is. And then maybe somebody to batter dialogue with. That's, keep it economic, keep it, little as a cast. Well, when I look at my novels and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ooh, that's 12 characters in Neon Leben. Whoops. And I had one editor once be like, listen, in a sci-fi novel like Neon Leben, I was half expecting that one trash can that one of your characters used to turn into a side character, because everything, like every little thing, you see somebody once in one scene and you know enough about them, like, oh wow, that's a character. And I make too many, and so I think that it could get potentially a little confusing unless I pare it back and pull it down, and just sort of like, oh no, we're concentrating just on these 4 in this novel. Doesn't mean the other 15,000 don't exist. It just means that these 4 are the important ones. And that takes my editor to really help me and go, okay, let's talk about this. We've got 8 storylines that you're kind of weaving in, the main one and 7 subplots. You can't have 7, you can have 4. What are we doing? Okay, let's do this. And then we are reducing down and making sure everything is making sense and not making things confusing. So that's definitely my challenge. I try and throw too many ingredients in the pot and then my sauce just tastes muddled.
So, Miss Burnell, is it easy for you to name your characters?
Usually, yes. I go on behindthename.com and I pick names based on their meanings. And so whatever I want that character to represent, whatever their main struggle is, or whatever it is about them that I want them to learn or grow into over time, I will foreshadow that with the meaning of their name. And of course, behindthenames.com, you can search by meaning, you can search by popularity, you can also search by culture. And so if I know a character comes from a certain place, then I'm searching certain meanings, but only within certain culture, certain gender, certain, anything like that. So for me, finding names really is about creating a promise, an Easter egg, if you will, of what this character means and what this character is going to go through. And that's just part of my creation process when it comes to building a character. Because for me, I need to start with, what is this character for? Who are they? Like, what is it that they're going to represent for my readers? What are they going to learn through this character's eyes? And that's how I really create my characters. Because everything has to mean something. I can't just be like, oh, this one's Julie. Why? Because I like the name Julie. Well, what does Julie mean? Is it short for Julius? Is it short for something else that's bringing you back to ancient Rome? So I definitely heavily use behindthename.com and search that meaning.
Very well said, Miss Burnell. So, if you want to go back and revise the book itself, Ginnungagap, which part of the book you want to revise?
Oh, just Ginnungagap. I mean, there's one decision that I've been struggling with since Charndash. We made this decision, we did it. There's always that. For those of you who are like, what decision was it, Sapha? What one? Well, make sure you read Charndash. When you get to the end, you'll know. It'll smack you into well, just like it smacked Caleb into a log in the middle of Stanley Park, it'll smack you really hard in the chest. So I made a decision in book 1, and then I reinforced it in Ginnungagap. I reinforced it in book 4. And it's difficult. It is so difficult. Okay, I'm just going to allude to it here. I'm not going to mention who it is, but there is character death in Charndash. Somebody dies, and reinforcing that and being like, yes, this person is dead in a fantasy novel full of myth punk gods and goddesses, where technically people could be revived, reincarnated, people could be resurrected. There is that, because the characters of Icarus and Lou are the resurrected Icarus and their brother Leander. So I'm like, oh, but it's the whole thing. If you're writing a fantasy novel and you'd kill off a character and then you try and bring that character back later, does it just cheapen the death? Do you need to really stick to it? So we struggled hard with basically Schrodinger's dead character and whether or not they would remain dead. And I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it. You're
Yes.
going to have to read the book to find out what we did. And that was the hardest decision, because my gut instinct as just a fan of literature and my gut instinct as a fan of certain kinds of prose, I was like, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what would be the most fair for the readers and what would be the most enjoyable. And so it's definitely something that my editor and I went back and forth with. It was the one decision that we went back and forth with in incredible ways, like for months. I think it took like a month and a half for us to come to the conclusion of what we needed to do. And so we finally did it. And I'm still like, oh yeah, but what if no, Sapha, no. Okay, well, but it's done. Okay, yeah, but if we just think about this a little harder, Sapha,
Stop it.
stop it. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Oh,
But
okay,
just one
Miss.
more time. No, go away. Yeah, so
That's the final.
this is it. It's done. It's
So, Miss Burnell, let's give adjective of all your Judge of Mystic Saga books. So let's start with Charianas, book 1.
ooh, off kilter.
Why is that?
Because Caleb starts off thinking it's just a regular day, another moment where he has to go clean up a mess of one of the mystic folk. And then the rest of the entire novel has him constantly off kilter. He's constantly off his game a little. He's working with Tuya Dragonova, his wife. They're a team, and they're sort of, they think they know what they're doing, and then everything sort of kind of, the gravity in the room twists a little, and they got to get their footing again, and then something else changed. Got to get their footing again. And then they have this constant sense that they're off their feet until the end of the book, where you have this massive battle and then something happens. And it again leaves Caleb in that sense of, you know, he now knows what the problem is. He can define the enemy, he can define the issue, but that doesn't mean he's not still trying to find his feet again. So I would definitely say that Charn Ash is emotionally off kilter.
Very well said, Miss Burnell. And book two, Son of Abel.
How do I say this? Son of Abel, I would say, holding the breath. It's that pause, that quick intake, that hold of a breath. It's, about Caleb because he is the son of, I do a lot with, basically, I'm paralleling my take on characters in Norse mythology that really do not have a lot of information in the extant text. So the sons of Thor, Magni and Mutti. There's not a lot in folklore about Magni and Mutti. There's not a lot written down. So I figured I had the freedom to go, okay, I'm going to do something with them. And so I liken and parallel Magni and Mutti with Cain and Abel in Son of Abel. And so we get a couple of different timelines. We get something that's happening in the, 8th century AD in Europe. And then we have Caleb's story of what he's going through in 2017. And it's this wonderful display of tension, especially when Caleb is basically being chased, trying to be found and brought home by one of his best friends, Lou. And Lou is in Leander, great grandson of Ares. He's a soldier. He's Icarus's brother, and Lou is constantly trying to find Caleb and bring him home, and just be like, "Oh no, dude, like you need to come home right now. Like you are not okay, and I'm not going to leave you as not okay." So Lou is constantly trying to find Caleb, but he's always too late. He's always not necessarily able to find him until the end. And there's that consistent line of tension going, what's Caleb going to do? What's Caleb going to do? Oh no, he met up with this person. Oh no, what if he gets closer to that goal that he has in Son of Abel that none of us want for him, that we all want him to come home so we can, give him a hug and make it better. And so there is this constant tension that just keeps rising and rising until the end of Son of Abel. And then that tension comes crashing down and leaves us in this space where, Caleb can begin a journey of healing. So definitely I would say that sort of arrested breath, that like that tension is the main thing in Son of Abel.
Yes, definitely interesting. And of course, the book three.
Book of Revels. It's we're having it's getting there, it's
To be published.
yeah, we're in the middle of making sure that it launches everywhere, basically. Some stuff going on behind the scenes. But Book of Revels is coming, and it's coming quick. It was supposed to be out a bit ago, but then there's just some distributions. There's some stuff in the background and distribution that went a little haywire. So we're like, it's sitting there. I literally have the book in my hand right now. So book 3, I would say, oh, Justice, sweet, sweet Justice. It's powerful. Caleb's found his feet. There's confidence there. He's got his confidence back. He's not faltering as he did in Son of Abel. Son of Abel is definitely the emotional low point of the character. And so now we're on the upswing. We're climbing the mountain. And we see justice. We see justice for Caleb when it comes to Stana. We see justice for a character that we get introduced to, a Charisma. We see her find a better space too. We get justice in comparison to what happens with Delilah in Son of Abel. And we also see justice for Magni, Caleb's uncle, and the quite belligerent son of Thor. So definitely this is a book of justice. It is a book of people getting their sweet, sweet desserts. And it's a little bit more action-packed in that regard in comparison to Son of Abel. There is a little bit less tension there was a huge amount of emotional tension just with what was going on with Caleb kind of surviving what happens at the end of Char and Ash, and then you coming into Son of Abel, and there's this like, oh, what's going on? What do you know, Caleb? And now Book of Revels is Caleb kind of able to shake off a little bit of that grief and starting to have some fun again. And so you really get to see like Caleb the action hero, like Caleb the action star, and it's sweet, and it's just so full of justice. The judge gets to do what he does best, because it's about time the judge got to do what he does best.
So. Yes, book 3, people, Book of Rebels, and of course, book 4, Ginnungagap.
Ginnungagap, I would definitely say familial. It's about family. It's got that sort of rectification of anything that was left over from Book of Revels and the rest of the books in this quartet. You've got that sense of family coming together. You have that sense of combining and recombining and being with each other, and forgiving some wrongs while also putting down some boundaries and things like that too with family. And then, of course, you have that family then coming together as a stronger unit as a whole and going to battle against the gigantic big bad and having this like massive, almost apocalyptic battle that, that's it. This is the fate of the worlds. This is the fate of the realms. Like, we either win this battle or, it was great that we reconnected before the end of the world. No. We are going to win this battle. Everybody has found their power. Everybody is at a more confident place, except for our enemies, but that makes them more dangerous, and we are ready. We are ready to have this explosive and familial and just comforting. It's this, I find it really interesting to play with, that sort of sense of, family comfort. You've had a bad day, you go to your family, and then, whether it's your found family or your actual like genetic family, like I shouldn't say actual family, because for me, found family is just as important. Whatever you define family as, when you come together and you're able to sort of join forces, it becomes a shockwave that can change the history of the realms. It can change the history of the entire cosmos, the universe. And that is what happens with Ginnungagap. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I also love that, Thor's great granddaughter gets to wield his hammer, and I do it mythologically. So obviously, in order to wield Mjolnir in Norse mythology, you need to have the gauntlets. There are special gauntlets that Thor wears. There's also a special strength belt that he puts on in order to wield Mjolnir. And so, a 13-year-old girl being like, they're a little big, but fashion, and wielding a gigantic magic hammer to get back at the people who tried to hurt her dad. Like, done. I love it. Where do I sign? It was so fun to write. And it was so fun to be able to kind of go through the journey, because I always start my novel series either at a point of chaos or a point of order. And then I'm going from either chaos to order or from order to chaos. And so in the Judge of Mystics quartet, I start in that chaotic vent and get more towards the order and more towards that sense of order and completion by the end. And so it was really good to see people actually, catch their breath and have the ability to have fun in what they need to do to save the world. So
to save the world. Indeed. So, Miss Burnell, can you please invite our listeners to support all the Mystic Saga?
Hi, everybody. As I said, my name is Sapha Burnell. That is SAPHABURNELL.com for my website. It has more information on the Judge of Mystics Saga. It also has information on my other stories like Whiskey and Sinner's Blood and The Lamia, which all take place within the Judge of Mystics universe. You can go to saphaburnell.com and get links to purchase all of these books. Please read them. If you like myth punk, if you like a mixture of family drama and kickin' booty, these are definitely the books for you. They are a lot of fun. They're also a very emotional ride, but trust me, I'm an author. I'm going to take you out on the other side and everything is going to be okay. And I really hope you read them. If you are somebody who are like, well, I want to support you, but go to your local public library and talk to the librarians and see if they will bring them in wherever you are in Canada or the United States. It is incredibly important. If you're anywhere else in the world, it is incredibly important as well. I just have more information about North America because I happen to live in Canada. If you are an author in a place like Canada, we have public lending rights. What that means is for authors, if their books are in local public libraries in Canada, they can apply for PLR, which will basically give them a bit of income to kind of quote unquote replace the potential lost royalties from people in libraries just taking the same book out again and again and again. It is an incredibly important program. So absolutely go to your local public library and ask for the works of Sapha. Burnell, ask for Char and Ash, for Son of Abel, for Book of Revels, for Macabre and Monsters, any of my books. And go ahead and you can do that also for any of the small press, indie, and traditional authors that you enjoy. Make sure your library knows you want to read them, because if they bring them in, it can be a huge difference, and you can make sure that other people in your communities get to read the same things that you do, and you can have an experience that really enriches us all. So please.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Sapha Burnell, because if you support her, more books to come.
Oh yeah.
Definitely more books to come. Before we go, and I want to shout out to the people listening in Taiwan, because I got number 92 on the Apple chart. Thank you, Taiwan. I hope you will support Miss Burnell for all the Mystic Saga books, because it's something else.
And we are looking for a translation, a publication too. So we are looking at, once the quartet is done, I am looking at translation agents and agencies to get these books translated into more than just English.
Spanish. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Norwegian.
Oh, it would be amazing. Oh my goodness, it would be amazing if I could translate it into Bookmall.
Yes, for sure. And watch out, tune in next week, because we are live next week. Right, Miss Burnell?
We're live.
What we gonna talk about next week, Miss Burnell?
Oh, do we want to talk about sci-fi? There's some
Of
really
course.
cool stuff going on in sci-fi, and some interesting motifs that are going to be coming up. There's quite a few novels on the same motifs, and I would love to take a look at that, because by the end of the year, by December, I have the long-awaited sequel to Neon Lieben coming out, Emptiness at the Center, and it would be fantastic to talk about cyberpunk and science fiction and what people are releasing this year.
Yes, definitely. We're gonna compare Neil Gaiman, Madeline Miller, and a lot more. So, Miss Burnell, thank you for your time.
And thank you for yours. Thank you for having me on, and hope everybody has a fantastic week.
Fantastic week, people, and have a nice weekend. More to come, people. See you soon.
Bye.